talking myself. And after I was connected with him, I started following him and just followed just some incredible things that he was doing and still is doing, and taking everything that he's doing to the next level, and speaking and just being on some pretty cool podcasts. So as always, guys, make sure that when we bring these speakers in here, please make sure you connect with them, right? Obviously, every speaker that we bring in, guys, it's a big deal for them to be on this call with you guys. So I don't take it for granted. These are very, very busy entrepreneurs. So please follow them, share them, support them, share the call. You never know who could potentially be impacted by just following him. And I'll tell you that you will be impacted just by following him. So for the most part, guys, as always, just make sure we're locked in. I know you guys are busy, but just for this hour, try not to multitask. I want you to grab every piece of content, piece of information that you can from this call. Find the money seed. As always, prime your mind to show up to these calls so you can grab some things to write down, and whatever it is that you're going to take, you're going to learn a lot, you're going to hear a lot, but even if you could take 1 to 2 things and start implementing, you could see some massive traction in your life, whether it's for your mindset, your relationships, your health, or your business. So for the most part, guys, a few things I always like to tell you, what I believe and what you will get out of this call. So first, you're going to get an incredible comeback story, right? So I want you to understand that. And, the reason why that's important is, you're going to get an incredible comeback story, but you're also going to get a lot of perspective, because let's just face it, we always at some point feel sorry for ourselves. And when we feel sorry for ourselves and woe is me, find excuses for ourselves, whatever that may be, it kills your performance for that day. And sometimes you not being able to perform for a day can be detrimental, right? If you could lose out on that deal, that could, be the connection that changes your business, whatever. So I always want to make sure whatever we can do to prime your mind every single day with certain hacks, perspectives, stories, speakers, you remember this stuff so you can crush it throughout your day. So perspective, an amazing comeback story you're going to get. Also, I want you to understand that you're also going to be able to hear from somebody who literally created a product and brought a product, and it is the #1 product for this space in the country. That's a big deal. Any product that is brought to the market and is #1 in the country, that is very important to listen and write your questions down. What is it that you want to know? So I want you guys to know that too. And another thing that I know that you're going to get on this call, and again, you're going to get a lot more, but is don't miss the part of whatever he did, he casted a big vision or a bigger vision. So you're going to get another example of how to cast a massive vision and bring it to life in the circumstances that he came from, which he's going to go into for you guys. So, I always like to coach you guys on what to look for on these calls so you're ready for it. You don't miss it. But Travis, thank you so much, man, for being on this call. You're an inspiration to me, man, and you were, recommended to me through some amazing people, and I'm honored and grateful that you took the time to be on this call, man. So thank you so much.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I appreciate the introduction. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 9 a.m. out here Pacific time. So wherever you find yourself, everybody doing well, hopefully. And I'm just grateful to be here, Devin. So I've seen what you guys do, and I've seen the speakers you've had on in the past. So I'm just hopeful that I can contribute to somebody out there today.
Awesome, man. I know you will. So Travis, if you want to kind of, I think what's best is to kind of share the beginning of your journey, because I know that played a big part into all your success now. And then, and then you can go into, I know you want to help us with, having that convicted mindset and all that good stuff too. So I would really like you to share the story, and then we can go into all that, if you don't mind, or just run.
No, absolutely.
You want to do. It's your show. So
yeah. We'll start kind of from the beginning. I grew up on the East Coast, grew up in Boston, and had the opportunity to really dive into business when I was younger. And it was all of the fun stuff. It was the newspaper routes. It was the selling the brownies and the Rice Krispies out front. So it was a really, really fond, memory of being like a young entrepreneur. And so I always kind of had the bug. It always kind of bit me. And so when I was able to channel that later on in life, I realized that numbers were really my thing. Wasn't an emotional type of youth, wasn't an emotional kid. And so I really realized that numbers resonated with me. I could figure out how to buy more, how to spend less. It was a very simple metric to me. And, grew up in a very, very tumultuous household. And so really needed to kind of find myself, find my skill sets, hone my skill sets. My father is a notorious organized crime figure, and so stability in the household didn't really exist. And so for me, I knew I had to kind of chart my own path. So having a perfect example of what not to be as a father, what not to do as a role model, I took the alternative from what my dad had laid out there and really kind of kept on that straight and narrow path. Found myself in a good position in school and in a great position in graduate school, and had some fantastic opportunities on Wall Street. And, this was the boom days, 2002, 2004, 2006, the good old days, as I like to call them. And, was able to spend 7.5 years on the street in the financial services industry, doing very well, and thought that I kind of had the tiger by the tail. At the age of 25, we had $117 million under management, which was a big number at the time. In today's world, isn't that big of a number when you're talking assets under management, but nonetheless, it was kind of my first foray into what it looks like for investor capital. The reason I tell you the beginning of my father's story was because it really came to a head with some of his actions, and it brought the family under some heavy scrutiny from the state of Arizona. And the state of Arizona came after me for what they termed transactions of an unregistered securities dealer or salesman. This was the olden days of Wall Street, where the state commissions had a lot more regulatory power than the federal commissions. In very, very, very simple terms, I try to explain it to people in what's going on today with the legislation and the legalization of marijuana. You can purchase it in some cities, some states, some counties, some municipalities, but the federal government will still take you to jail for a very long time if you have a U-Haul truck full of weed. So the regulation is very confusing. And because of who my dad was, and it was a very political time, I was caught up for a 6.5-year legal battle. I had the opportunity to sit down with the federal government, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the FBI for about 18 months, and they gave me a clean bill of health. I thought that was the end of it. When you get a piece of paper from an FBI agent with his signature and with that beautiful stamp on it that says there's no misappropriation, no dollars, no nothing here to pursue, you breathe a sigh of relief. That sigh of relief was very, very short for me. The state of Arizona came back after me. They have a threshold in that state that anything over $99,000 is a class 4 felony. That's unregistered. We chose to register with the feds, didn't need to register with the state of Arizona as it was an exempt transaction. So I had 66 of those class 4 felonies, and the state of Arizona dug their heels in for 6.5 years. And going through that process, up until that point, never once taken into custody, going into the courtroom on a monthly basis, every 30, every 45 days, it was nauseating. At the time, it was a very interesting moment, very, very similar to the current situation that we have right now. Real estate prices at an all-time high, a lot of supply chain issues. This was prior to the 2009 Great Recession, as we now call it. So there's a lot of similarities in what's happening right now, 2020, 2021, 2022, to that 06, 07, 08 that we lived through. And, I had the opportunity to open my books up to the federal government. And it did something that I didn't expect it to do, but it had every investor on the planet call me. And they said, hey, man, if you're getting 16 points a year, can you take my money? And most fund managers, that's a welcome phone call, except for if you're on a 6-year legal battle with the state of Arizona and you're under indictment. So it was a very odd time for me. On one hand, I was kind of like the Wall Street wonder kid. On the other hand, I was drugged through the mud quite extensively and very confusing. You're 25 years old, newly married. My wife's going through school. You're running several businesses and you're trying to figure out what in the world this all means. What's the purpose of all of this? And so my wife and I sat in our living room right around Christmas time one year, and I just said, whatever's coming next can't be this bad. Up until this point, we had turned over about $20,000 a month in legal fees, and it was exhausting. It was exhausting to walk into that courtroom every month and have no outcomes. It was exhausting to have the unknown hovering above your head for years. And for me, I honestly felt in my gut whatever was coming next could not be as bad as what I knew was in front of me. So we went to our attorney and said, let's put this before the judge and let's see where it lands. We couldn't come to a decision with opposing counsel with the state. And so we put it before the judge, and the judge, it was an interesting day. Because of my pedigree, because of my degree, because of who my dad was, because of the fact that I was a decent human, all of those things were used against me in that courtroom. It's public record, it's in my minute entries, and so I actually get pretty excited. The judge's words are framed above my office next to my Forbes article. And his comment to me was, I'm going to make an example out of you. And he was right. He did make an example out of me. He remanded me to 2 years in the Department of Corrections, state of Arizona. But I knew that that's where it wasn't going to end. And so for me, I had to figure out what was the deal. What was the problem? What was the solution? 2 years quickly became 15 months. The state of Arizona has an 85% good time, and I got 90 days of good time. So I just did 15 months. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about 10,000 hours. If you've never read it, it's pretty good. It's very old, and basically says in order to become an expert in anything, you need to spend 10,000 hours doing it. So that really hit me because I'm a numbers guy. And so if you put 15 months at 24 hours, you roughly come around with that 10,000 hour number. And so I thought this 10,000 hours is what I'm going to use to define myself. I'm going to figure out what life 2.0 looks like, what it feels like for me. So after the first 90 days, you go through this intake process, this numbing process. They take your photo, take your blood, take your vitals during intake, and then they send you to the yards where you're going to spend most of your time, if not all of your time. And after that first 90 days, I landed on this very low yard, obviously first time, last time, nonviolent, etc. And this minimum custody yard had a grant opportunity with a small business development center. And I had no idea, some of you may be shocked to hear this as well, but on a daily basis, about 40% of all inmates nationwide get out. They leave the yard and they go to work in the community. And so this particular yard that I was on had a grant where the community college, through the Small Business Development Center, would allow all the inmates on all 5 yards to come and go to college. And that SBDC had an opening, and because of my degree and my background, I was perfectly situated to become a tutor on a daily basis. And so Monday through Friday, I was able to leave the yard for 8 hours a day. And it became very, very, very therapeutic. It was super cathartic for me. I was able to sit in a room with hundreds of guys that never knew what FICO score was. I remember, I tell the story fondly, some of the first time when I started explaining to these guys, hey, you're going to be here for 3 years. Let's figure out Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. Let's get you dialed in. Let's figure out your FICO score. Everybody on the yard thought I was either talking about a gang member or it was a new F word. It wasn't readily available to talk about the FICO score on the prison yard, as one might imagine. And so for me, I knew that there needed to be some change here. So with that Small Business Development Center, I had hundreds of guys on a daily basis, and we were able to talk about business. And it was just an awesome opportunity for me to take my skill set and really impact the world. So every week, my wife would come down Saturdays and Sundays, and she would come through visitation. And I would tell her, man, I can fix this. If I can give an individual resources, if I can give an individual an understanding of credit, and if they've got 3 years and I can help them fix their credit, and I can help them get out so that they can get an apartment, and I can help them get out and they can get a vehicle, so they're not having to go to a buy here, pay here lot, so they're not having to have a battery choker on their car, so they don't have to live in some terrible transitional or halfway house. This is really a game changer. I can really fix this. So I started writing, and I ended up, at the time when I left, I ended up with a little over 300 pages of financial literacy. And it went from everything from FICO score to credit, and APRs and how to finance a vehicle, very rudimentary financial literacy stuff. But a lot of these guys inside, had never owned a vehicle legally. And when I exited after that 15 months, I gave that financial literacy to the prison system and just wanted to give it to them so that they could continue to spread the information. I knew that it was relevant, necessary. I knew it was valuable, but I didn't know where it would go. And it went like wildfire. I had a phone call about 6 weeks after I got out, and it was from the old warden. And he said, "Hey, they want you to come in and teach this." And I said, "Well, I'm definitely not interested in coming back and teaching, but let's figure out how this could work." At the time, I wasn't focused on going back inside a prison. I was more focused on fixing a problem. And so he offered me the opportunity to have this correspondence course. And what quickly became a couple hundred inmates were writing and corresponding to me through this financial literacy course. And I thought, man, there's just really something here. How can I take this bigger and better? Well, one of my very first investors was a gentleman who started a company called JPay, jail pay essentially. And they sold that company to a much larger telecommunications provider to the prison industry for about $500 million. And he called me and he said, "Hey, I hear that you're doing some stuff. I've just sold the company. I don't have any more, any more issues introducing you to people because of, I'm no longer involved. Let's get you on the tablets." And I said, "Man, this would be pretty incredible." So for those of you that are unaware, most inmates in federal facilities and state facilities and most jails today have a tablet, kind of like an iPad. And that tablet will allow them access to certain things, news, media, movies. It'll allow them to email their loved ones. It'll allow them to actually make FaceTime phone calls. And so the tablet system was just starting. This was a decade ago. And the tablet system was just coming online. It was still brand new. A lot of kinks needed to be worked out. So we put our financial literacy course on that tablet and it went bananas. I was able to, now facilitate in South Carolina. I was now able to have conversations in New York, and I didn't have to be in person teaching this, as a curriculum or as an educator. So it was a game changer for me and really for our company. And so what started out as a financial literacy course, very simple, quickly turned into a number of courses, quite a few courses. And the reason that I felt that our courses superseded anything that was out there was because they were tangible. All of you have taken some time here today, and I'm grateful for that. And I feel that so much of what's on social media is fluff. And I want to make sure that if anybody has anything here today, that we answer what is the steps. It's very frustrating for me when I see a quote unquote mastermind online, that takes people from A to Z in 30-second reels, when we all know that's not possible. When we all know that the real purpose is in the pit of life, and the real identity comes from the struggle, and the real understanding of who you are comes from all those late night conversations you have with yourself. That's not on social media because it doesn't sell and it's not sexy. But the tangible resources, the steps, how do I start a business? Most individuals inside don't even know what an EIN stands for, let alone where to find it, and don't even know that you can get it for free online. And so I really took a tangible approach to every piece of curriculum that we put out there. And 9 times out of 10, I was able to have it written or co-authored by somebody who was in the justice impacted system. So it had a little bit more meaning, a little bit more depth to it. And that was super important for me. So fast forward to the pandemic, and all of us are locked down. March of 2020, we all lose our mind. All of us are going through Netflix, watching Tiger King on binge, guilty. And you have these inmates inside that are locked down 24 hours a day, quite literally losing their mind. No human interaction, no personal touch, no communication. And so I had a phone call from the Bureau of Prisons, the federal government, and they said, "Hey, we need you to develop curriculum around what's happening, what's about to happen. So I developed a program called Chicken Soup for the Incarcerated Soul. It was about a 30-minute TED Talk followed by a 30-minute meditation sequence. And I had experts from all around the world that would walk people through meditation, visualization, mantras, whatever it might be, just to really get yourself primed and to get yourself in a good space before you go to bed, or in a better space, when you wake up. And that was what we developed for the prison industry during this pandemic. Fast forward to 2020, and I'm just jumping over the highlights. We can dive deeper if anybody else does with respect to everybody's time. Fast forward to 2020, Accomplished Ventures, which is my little nonprofit that started with a tiny FICO course, is now the largest provider of prison content in the country. On a nightly basis, we serve approximately 1 million inmates, and we go through over 42 courses: Business 101, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and then some of the intangibles where we say the quiet stuff out loud. We talk about guilt, we speak about shame, we talk about what we talk about when we're not talking. The conversation that we have with each other in the mirror when we're brushing our teeth. That idea that you had to start a business and then you look at yourself and you say, no one's going to buy that. That new diet that you were going to start, that new workout program, but you go, I'm just not good enough. I'm never going to live up to this. All that self-doubt, that self-talk that everybody has, no matter who you are, where you're at in life. We have conversations around that. We have communication courses around that. And for me, I really wanted to make sure that when we were building these programs, that again, they stayed tangible. The fluff to me doesn't really get anybody anywhere. You can have your wife or your significant other, your husband, write all sorts of motivational quotes and lipstick on the mirror, but those don't really change anything. The programming that you have inside yourself really is what creates the belief system. And so that's where Accomplished has come to. I'm proud to say we're now in 24 states nationwide, and on staff, I have 11 individuals, all of whom were lifers at one point. 3 of my 11 have all gone on to speak at TED Talks. 6 of the 11 all have best-selling books. And it has been a journey that I could have never imagined. It was an idea that started of, how do I fix a problem? How do I plug this hole in the boat? With the resources I have and the knowledge that God's given me, how do I really take this to the next level and change lives? And so that's what Accomplished does on a daily basis. My professional career still remains. I'm an investor on a daily basis. I look for, most of the time, income producing assets in the form of real estate or in the form of commercial businesses like self-storage and surgical centers. And that's what we do on a daily basis. And every Friday I get to go into a different prison around the country. And that's what fills up my cup. That's what gives me the depth of change that I believe allows us all to really understand why we're here. And so with that all being said, I'd love to either go into the next 30 minutes of questions that you guys might have for me and gals might have for me, or I can continue to deep dive on any of the subjects that I talk about.
I feel like there's, and by the way, guys, if you want, please raise your hand or just hit me up in the messages and I will make sure to call you. But I have a few things that I wrote down. And as you listen to these calls, guys, remember, you're not going to remember a lot of things. So write it down, whether it's a question. And it's funny you talked about the conversation, thinking about this, guys, the conversations you have with yourself when nobody's looking. That is very, 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 very powerful. And that crushes dreams a lot of times. That crushes health goals. That crushes relationships. Now, you said, and I love that you talk tangible, like when you talked about, listen, it's cool, these quotes, stuff like that, like just like you're sitting in prison. But at the end of the day, it's not giving you the shovel to dig out, right? You could just, I know that there's a path through there, but I don't have anything to dig through. So you're giving us kind of the shovel here. So when you talk about you have a course or a curriculum that is built around the conversations you have with yourself, because guys, I share this with you guys all the time on social. Like, I always am battling self-doubt, imposter syndrome, like every single day. But I work on trying to get better at it so I can perform at a higher level. I would be so interested to hear, like, what are some strategies and tips on ways that you can help us with those conversations that we have when nobody's looking.
Yeah, I love that. So there's a couple things I'll dive into. So you know how we all wake up in the middle of the night and you navigate yourself to the bathroom, without crushing your toe and, running into a wall and, any of the other things that could happen. And then you make yourself back to the bedroom or to the bed. That brain that's going on, that reticular activating system that navigates life has started from a young age. And so from a young age, we've been told all these things, hey, Devin, you got to be nice. Devin, you got to be kind. Devin, you got to be gentle. Devin, you got to be cautious. Devin, you can't show off. Devin, you've got to be humble. You start all of these things to become the belief systems, these RAS. And so as we grow up, all of these things, even though they were good advice on their own and individual accord, but rarely do they ever serve a 40-year-old father of 3 boys who doesn't feel like he's the authority figure in his boys' lives. And because of that, he avoids the tough conversations that his boys need the most of. That's the self-talk. That's the self-confidence, the courage, the clarity, the commitment. Those are the things that the brain doesn't really want us to focus on because they bring us pain. The moment you have an opportunity for pain, the brain navigates away from it. That's where the battle of self-doubt comes in. So for me, most people have this negative self-story of themselves, right? It's, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too rich, I'm too broke, I should have yelled at the kids, I should make more money. That story leads you to your reality. And so what happens is when your reality doesn't mirror what goes on in your head, then we start to use these buzzwords in society: depression, anxiety, sadness, right? But all of that's bullcrap. It's not true, because when you realize you've got to re-engineer where you've gone. I'm no longer that young kid that needs to be humble, be kind, be gentle, be cautious. While all those things are fantastic, it doesn't serve me in where I'm going right now. And so I'll walk you through this. I wrote this quote literally in 1,000 prison cells in America. And it's like this: a mind stretched by a new experience can never go back to its former dimensions. There's 5 steps that I walk people through, incarcerated or not, because I'll tell you this: even though I speak to thousands of inmates on a nightly basis, the worst prisons of America are not made of concrete and steel. The worst prisons in America are these limiting beliefs that social media, that your loved ones, that your coworkers, that your family members have given to you, and worse, you have given to yourself. Those are the concrete jungles that I see people struggle with every day. I got 15 months, but I'll tell you what, I've got more friends that are living out in society who have a life sentence. I got more friends that don't want to go home because they can't stand their spouse. I got more friends that don't know what to do with their children and are scared to death and don't have the balls to take that conversation. I got more friends that hate their job and can't stand Mondays. You want to talk about a life sentence? Work 40 years for 40 hours a week on stuff that you're not passionate about. Everybody says, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out. That's bullshit. You're not a candle. You're uninspired. That's what you are. And so for me, I believe that we hold that pen. And I'll tell you where that pen starts. It's like this. I got 5 of them that I walk everybody through. Number 1, programming creates beliefs. Programming creates beliefs. Number 2, beliefs create attitudes. Number 3, attitudes create feelings. Number 4.
Well, I want to write this down. I don't want to miss this. Programming
creates beliefs.
Number 2.
Beliefs create attitudes.
Gotcha.
Attitudes create feelings. Feelings determine actions. And actions create results. And that's how the brain works. So if you want to manage yourself in a better way, in a way to change your results, you've got to reverse engineer to number 1, which is the programming. So many of us get hopped up, right? You see an ET, Eric Thomas quote. We get all sorts of lit up. Tony Robbins comes on. Cardone's yelling at you. Brad Lee's screaming at you with good ideas, whatever it is. But that doesn't create lasting change. Those are just feelings. You've got to take those actions a step further, because actions actually create results. Positive thinking does nothing to change your life, but positive action produces the results that positive thinking told you could happen.
Whew, man, I'm so thankful I asked that question, because these 5 steps, man, I mean, guys, by the way, remember, this just isn't for you. If you're a leader, you run a sales team, you have clients, like, this information, guys, is for human beings. Like, I don't care whoever it is in your life, like, don't just think about this for you. Like, you should be sharing this and helping other people, because this is impactful stuff, man. Oh, all right. Hold on. All right, cool. So remember, guys, raise your hands. If you have anything, I will make sure to call on you. I have a few other notes written down here.
Matt has a question.
Oh, Matt, there you go. All right, what we got? Unmute, Matt.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
All right. Yeah, I wanted to ask, so those courses, like, are they outside the prison system? Like Devin said, I was thinking the exact thing. A lot of our labor force has no idea what a FICO score is or anything, and that's one we want our employees better people. We want to educate them on these.
Yeah, super great question, Matt. I'll share our financial literacy course with Devin, and he can disseminate it to the group. Totally happy to get that over to you. Not a problem.
Thank you.
It's kind of interesting, and it's not kind of interesting. I find it to be fascinating. So I'll give you guys kind of a crash course on tablets. I don't think in America you'll go to prison in the next 5 years without a tablet. Let me give you a couple reasons why. When I started this a decade ago, I would walk in and, I don't look like a typical inmate. I don't look like a, quote unquote typical, right? Because of my pedigree and background, they either thought I was someone's attorney or, someone's visitor. And so I was able to get in the room with the right people. And what I learned very quickly was the narrative that I was sharing with them was wrong. And let me tell you why. I think we do this often in our day-to-day. I would walk in and I would say, Devin, check it out. I'm going to take all of your inmates. They're going to become entrepreneurs. They're going to make money. They're going to be tax-abiding citizens, and they're never going to come back. And you'd get a warden that looked at me and said, that's a boatload of work, Travis. I'm not interested. Now, if I walked in to you and I said, Devin, check it out. I'm going to put $300,000 a month to your bottom line. And they go, tell me more. Tell me more about that idea. Well, here's the idea. If you could check on 4,000 inmates via FaceTime, how much money would it save you? If I could disseminate 4,000 inmates an education curriculum on one tablet, how much money would that save you? If I could, and I would go on and on and on and on and on, and they would go, this is genius. How do we get our tablets here? And I go, that's the right question to be asking, right? And so what I think oftentimes that we do with other people is we put the narrative in the wrong direction. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. And especially for those that you are leaders and have sales teams and everything else, it's finding the narrative for that person in front of you that is stuck. And sometimes that's yourself, but sometimes, and most of the time, it's other people. And so the narrative that you have inside of you, and for me, that narrative comes down to identity. So, Devin has the God behind him. And so I'm a believer. I'm a faith abiding man. I'm a Christian, all the above. And so I'm going to go here for a second. And that's my warning for everybody, just to mute me if you're, not a believer. But for me, I believe that we are here as a 400 trillion to 1 miracle. I believe that for us, it's our divine destiny to be here right now, right at this moment with the people that are around us doing the things that we're doing. And for me, when you understand that you're that important, you don't need coffee in the morning to get you going. You don't need other people's quotes to get you going any longer, because the greatness that you've been looking for is inside of you. It's your identity. You can call it why, you can call it purpose, you can call it knowing, whatever you want to call it. But to me, the identity is the reason that catapults you to where you need to be. And it's not just you, but it's the other people. I had this young kid that worked for me for a very long time. And I was like, this kid is a sales monster. I cannot figure him out for the life of me. His brother's a sales monster, but this kid doesn't want to do anything. If I gave him a to-do list, he would complete the to-do list within the confines of that to-do list. nothing outside the box, nothing greater, nothing bigger, never could see his own potential. And when I sat down with him and said, man, I see this inside of you, but what's the narrative that you're telling yourself? And he explained it to me. And it was that moment that I realized that his narrative is not my narrative for him, and it probably never will be. And so I'm coaching him in the wrong direction, in the wrong way. Now, for you, finding your identity, for me, I want to use the tools that the creator gave me. I want to make sure that I'm failing. Kind of a weird juxtaposition, right? But we learned to walk by failing. We got hurt. We cried. It went over. I've got a 12-month-old. She's doing it at the moment. We leaned on our parents for stability, and then we tried again. But somewhere, yep, fail fast, learn fast, 1,000%, Jeremy. But somewhere along the way, we stopped failing, right? And so I'm not sure if it's because social media told us it wasn't cool. I'm not sure if because your family said, hey, we can't afford for you to fail. I'm not sure if it's because your best friend looked at you and said, this is ridiculous. But all those boos from the crowd, they mean nothing unless the narrative in your head supports it. And that's where it goes back to the identity. For me, there's something out there that's divinely meant for me, and there's something out there that's divinely meant for you. Most often we get there by failing. I'm a big fan of using the F word and removing the F word from my vocabulary. And the F word I'm talking about is the word fine. So many times, and you're going to realize this, look in your circles today and through the rest of the week. How many times you call somebody, text somebody, reach out, shake someone's hand, and they go, hey, Devin, how are you? And they say, I'm fine. That F word drives me nuts. Because if you leaned on your identity, if you really knew that greatness was inside of you, you'd never be fine ever again. You'd be great. What questions? Oh, sorry, I cut someone off.
No, we got Jim, because I have a few things I want to go into, but I saw Jimmy raise your hand, man. Hop on in here.
Yeah, I just had a question with when it comes to limiting beliefs and dealing with people that you're working with, short of like direct questions and assault, how do you uncover or help them uncover the limiting beliefs that they might not even truly recognize that they have about themselves?
Great question.
Freaking incredible question, my friend. So what I'll tell you with limiting beliefs is that most of the time people don't want to uncover them. That's what I've found. Most of the time people will tell you, you guys know this, hey, where do you want to eat today? I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. The apathy in our society is so prevalent that the limiting beliefs are oftentimes not even consciously recognized. Now, how I do it for people, I go, let's do this. Let's write down 2 things that you do if nobody judged you. Nobody saw you do them. What are those 2 things that you would do? And I start with those 2 things. And then I reverse engineer why we're not doing them. Quite literally, a vision creation step is what I call it. Why are we not doing these 2 things? Why are we not really living up to this potential? I take it a step further. Once you kind of unpack that with people, it's going to take some time to unpack that. I have a lot of clients that are in the fitness industry, and that's in a very emotional sale. A lot of clients in the pest control industry, it's a very face-to-face sale. So when you're talking to someone in the fitness industry and you say, look, do you want a personal trainer? Well, the answer is no. I actually don't want anybody to yell at me, and I actually don't want to meet anybody at the gym, and I actually don't really want to walk out of here uncomfortable, right? But what do you want? So many of us are focused on what we don't want. I don't want this, and I don't want that, and I don't need this, and I don't need that. But we can't even tell you what we actually do want in one sentence, in one very, very clear sentence. So now a vision creation step for me, and everybody write this down, starts with, you know how, and then it moves into, well, I, or well, we, if you're running a sales team or an organization. And let me unpack that for you. So you know how, well, we, or well, I. You know how you get in an elevator with people, or you're at dinner with folks and people go, what do you do? And some of us bounce around. Oh, well, some days, I'm kind of doing this thing. And, I don't know, my buddy and I, we kind of started, and people, I'm through the appetizer and I don't even have a clue what's going on, right? You're so unclear on your mission that I'm confused. This is where I think a lot of people are that you're talking about that have that limiting belief system. So I want to reverse engineer that. All right, how do I do that? Let's put this into perspective. You got those two things you've written down. Now on the top right-hand corner, 78 birthdays. Most of the time, we get 78 birthdays here in America. Most of us will live to be 78 years old. If we live past that, fantastic. On the left-hand side of that paper, I want you to write how many birthdays you've already burned. Great. Now that middle piece is the two things that you would do if nobody was judging you. And now we're going to unpack them with you know how. Great. Devin, you know how people go to prison and 8 times out of 10, they go back in the first year? Well, we actually teach the Department of Corrections and the Bureau of Prison how to rehabilitate individuals for a successful reentry. Oh, love it. I'm super clear, right? And so oftentimes when you start with the you know how, people will relate to a pain point. You know how people start the gym on January 1st, but by January 7th, they've quit? Well, we have an accountability program that allows you to stay. You follow the you know how well we. If you start using this in your dialogue, you start understanding what I really want to do. And if right now you don't know what you want to do, perfect. But use this as kind of like a tool. Start at the top. Here's the 2 things if nobody judged me. Here's how much time I have left on this planet, plus or minus. I'm not being morbid. But what am I going to do with that time? Because if nobody judged me, these are the 2 things I would do. Awesome. Now, where's the pain point and the emotional point? You know how people want to be known? Well, we have a publishing company that allows me, right? You follow the you know how well we. That's my diagram. If I was whiteboarding this for you, you see how I do that in the air there? But that's my diagram on how I would get super clear with people's limiting beliefs.
Man, I just hope you guys didn't, man, it's just like what you just said right there, dude, I was just like, as you hit me and put it all together with, you know how well you think about sales, you think about talking to clarity, talking to your people in your organizations, talking to people that you're trying to, in your company, help out to be a better person or to be more productive. This is great stuff. Who else here? Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody's hands up because so I wanted to share this. And it's funny, you just said, hey, is there anything that you guys would be doing, right? If you didn't care what anybody thought, right? And, I want to share, a friend of mine was in jail, and one of the scariest things I've ever been a part of was going to visit him. Mm-hmm. Right? Every time I left that jail, I had this moment of gratitude where I was like, thank God I am not in there.
Yeah.
Then I thought in my mind, and I would love for you to share about this, guys, because if he said to you, if there's things right now that you would be doing, but you're not doing it, right? And shit, I raised my hand. There's things right now that I need to be executing on that I haven't been doing, right? And I want you to think about if you were in jail today and you were in jail for the next 2 weeks, forget about a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? I can tell you that every ounce of me would be like, man, when I'm out of this shit, I am going to execute on everything I have that I want to do. I'm not waiting days. Like, I'm going to crush every 24 hours because of the freedom that I have. And a lot of times we take our freedoms for granted. So I want you guys to think about that. And I just want to share my experience just from visiting jail and think about what is it right now that you're not executing on. That, I'm just going to wait next week, holiday weekend coming up, whatever that is. That's a challenge that I want to give every single one of you. Right now, put that perspective in there because that shit was terrifying to me. And Travis, when you first got in there, man, I would love to know, how did you shift your mind? But also, we have a lot of people on here, whether it's you're trying to motivate people to buy your services or you're trying to motivate your team to do better or help coach somebody in your family. Some of you, I got a lot of family that's fucked up on drugs. I deal with a lot of shit, right? So I would really love to know how you got into their minds as prisoners. Shit, sometimes people, they're in their life in jail. So it's like, why do I care? I'm going to be in here forever. So these are probably some of the hardest people to change their mindset and to change their lives. I would be interested to know how you did that, because this is super valuable to everybody on this call. So please lock into that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell these guys all the time, what you don't know can hurt you and will always hurt you. And I live by one simple phrase, and that's biography is not destiny. When I first started Accomplished, I would tell these individuals that felon is nothing more than a noun. That's it. Person, place, or thing. It's super boring. It's like hair, short hair, bald hair, blonde hair, gray hair, silver hair, curly hair. When you put an adjective in front of that noun, it gives it some personality, gives it some depth, some emotion, some feeling. And so I wanted everybody to feel accomplished. And that's where I was going to start with. And I wanted everybody to understand that biography wasn't your destiny, because just because your parents weren't great role models, that doesn't have any indication of how far you're going to go in life. Just because you have some trauma in your past, it has zero indication on what you're able to do, period. And so most of the time when I really sit down and I talk about these authentic conversations in prison, they revolve around pain and trauma and shame, 100%. And so oftentimes I'll tell people that a childhood of trauma will manifest itself at the age of 40 years old in the form of an addiction. We have this limiting belief. We have this idea that we are only able to be good enough. But that's where what you don't know can and always will hurt you. If you don't know who you are and you don't know what your identity is and you don't know where you're trying to go, you will never be able to get there, because that pain will never serve you. I was in a pretty cool room one time, and I'll rewind. I wasn't going to tell you just because of lack of time. Another black gentleman and myself were flown into South Carolina during a prison riot about 4 years ago. Literally flown in, helicoptered in, 4,200 inmates, black and white prison riot. He's a well-known individual, and we were dropped right in, stab vest and all. Spent 11 days inside a South Carolina prison, one of the most heinous and abusive situations I've ever been in my life. Really coming to understand how much pain was inside those walls. And what we did was, I didn't broker a deal. I didn't use any of my Wall Street tactics. I didn't walk in and try to figure out if this was going to be a win-win or use any of those fancy bullshit lines. But I wanted to find out who was in the most amount of pain. And the person that was in the most amount of pain was usually the person calling the shots. And if I could figure out what that pain was and I could alleviate it, then I could make this whole thing go away. That to me is where I start with every single one of my guys incarcerated. If you don't address the pain of who you thought you were, or who you thought you were going to become, or the trauma of a parent that didn't give you an attention or abused you, and I'm taking nothing away from you for that. I'm taking nothing away from your experience or the negativity or the horribleness that you endured. But when we're told that we can't succeed, we start to believe it. Success is for other people. When you have parents or coworkers or loved ones or friends that really are unable to articulate their pain, they start to pull you back. It's like when you're rock climbing with your best friend. Inadvertently, you slip, he's above you or she's above you, you pull down their leg just because they're ahead of you, and you both go down together. And so for me, that pain is really where I start with everybody. What is it that will motivate you? And for me, it is pain. For me, I can tell you very, 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 very succinctly, I spent 17,520 hours away from my wife. And there is nothing in the world that will motivate me more at 5:30 in the morning, Monday through Saturday, than 17,520 hours, period. I use my pain to propel me to where I need to go. I'm not a guy that sits on motivation. I'm a guy that relies on beliefs. And believe this, everything you need to be great is already inside of you. All of your ambitions, all of your secrets, all of your darkest dreams, they're all waiting for you just to let go. And you've got to ask your question, what's stopping you? What piece of pain is stopping you? Is it the pain of someone going to make fun of you? Or is it the pain of a childhood that told you were no longer good enough? But whatever is stopping you, you're going to have so much pain when you go to that grave with doubt. And the doubt that you're living with right now inside yourself is creating this mountain. And I just want to show you how to move them. I want to get you to a place where you can shut out all that noise, all the negativity and all the fear, the distractions, the limiting beliefs, and believe in yourself that you can achieve whatever you want to do. That self-doubt, the anxiety, and the depression, those are habits. That's the good news. You can break them. I say this often. It's a very controversial subject to say, which is how you know I'm right. If you deal with somebody in your life that has depression or depressive thoughts, I ask all of them to write them down on a piece of paper. As crazy as that sounds, I want every single one of your negative thoughts, your depressive thoughts, on a piece of paper every day. And at nighttime, right before you go to bed, I want you to call me and we're going to read them out loud together. You'll often find that depression comes back to selfishness. The story of your life that you've been told is a trap. And the human mind tends to look for things that are the most painful and remember those things and force you to avoid them. Don't touch the stove. Don't play in the street. So you have to stand guard at the entrance of your mind. You have to guard your experiences of your life and make sure that you're always looking for what's right instead of what's wrong. And most of the time, it will come back to the pain. I don't want to do this because of the pain of regret. I don't want to start that business because of the pain of failure. I don't want to ask him or her out because of the pain of rejection. That will never get you anywhere in life until you use that pain to propel you from where you are to where you know you belong. When I was incarcerated, I used that pain.
So that's when you say like selfishness, it's because the reason, why I don't want to, it's because
I don't have this. I don't have that. I can't do this. I don't have enough money. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not saying that there are not people out there that don't suffer from a depression. I'm telling you that most of the time in our society, depression comes from these beautiful little boxes, and your reality doesn't fit with where you think you need it to be. I work out all the time. I don't look the way I want to look. I don't look like so-and-so. I work so hard. I didn't get that promotion. I don't make as much money as so-and-so because I saw my neighbor's new Tesla, right? All of those, I don't, I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, I should. All of those thoughts, most of the time they're selfish. When you reflect and you go, you know what? I'm going to give myself a depth of perspective. Let me propel myself to greatness. Let me figure out how I can use the next X amount of birthdays with the pain that God's given me to step up and execute. Let's take massive swings. I think James has a question.
Yep. James is a great story too, by the way.
This is a personal question. It might not help anybody else but me, but I wanted to ask it. So I am also a convicted felon and 24-year clean recovery.
Attaboy.
So my question is, how did you get past the helping people and be comfortable with monetizing it and turning it into a profitable career? Because my head tells me I should be helping everyone for free to pay the debt of gratitude that I have for the new life that I have. And it's very difficult for me to get comfortable with turning it into a money-based compensation for my time project.
Why?
Because I feel like, the deal that I made with the God of my understanding is that I'm supposed to help people for free just because I'm not dead or in jail.
And why do you feel that the debt of gratitude comes monetarily for you?
I think that's where I'm having the issue with is I would love to focus more on that as the way I generate my income and provide for my family, as opposed to running the mortgage company that I run and the other things that I do.
When you run the mortgage company, you make money or you give it all away?
I make money, sure.
Okay. And so when you run the mortgage company, what fulfills you about the mortgage company?
Nothing.
Okay. And so when you make that money, you pay your bills, right?
Yeah.
Right. So let's pretend next year you double your income. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That second amount of income, as it pertains to your first question with going back and helping the returned citizens, what would you do with that money? It's free, James. What do you do with it?
Take care of my family, probably.
More specific. I'm going to give you next year, January 1, I'm using a round number.
Uh-huh.
January 1, I'm going to give you $100,000. You got to spend $8,333 a month on this mission.
On the mission of helping people?
Correct.
I don't know. I don't know how.
That's the reason that you can't wrap your head around why it's okay to make the money. Because you haven't told yourself what I would do with $100,000 a year when God gives it to me. So he's not going to give it to you until you can figure it out. And
figure it out to reinvest it in the cause, or how?
1,000%. 1,000%. He's going to give you $1 million January 1st. It's up to you to figure out where it goes. I'm in the same boat as you, brother. I got a conference on June 4th here in like 10 days or whatever it is in Idaho. We're putting 1,000 kids under the roof. Okay. All these kids are unaccompanied minors, which means their parents are either in some sort of treatment facility or incarcerated. Okay. So I would like anybody to come to my event and pick up the $10,000 bill for healthcare. Every single St. Luke's hospital is showing up with the kids' medical bus. I don't care if it's a thumbnail, a toenail, a vaccine, an MRI, it's paid for. 250 backpacks with school supplies, because your dad's a jerk off doesn't mean you should be bullied on 8th grade. 250 shoes, 250 gym memberships, 250 backpacks, 250 blankets, 200. You follow, Jim? Like, this $100,000. You've got to be the guy who deserves the bag before you get the bag. And that's why you can't wrap your head around, I don't feel good about monetizing right now.
Thank you, for sure.
That's crazy, man. We were just talking, Brad, we had a small group last night. Same subject, dude. It was like, we have a Bible small group, and we were talking about that. Like, well, you're asking for, what are you going to do with it? Right? It's like, it's.
You got to be clear, James. You want to help people. You just got to get the plan. You got to reverse engineer it. And then you're not going to feel bad about it. Because right now you're helping tons of people with the mortgage. You feel good. Mom and dad, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, they get the home, 3.5% down, woohoo, high five, 6.5% interest rate because everyone's getting raped by Biden. Totally different story. I didn't mean to say that out loud. But now you feel good because they got their little slice of pie in America. Nobody comes to you and says, James, you made $1 million last year. How dare you? Appreciate you, Hoff. I was going to ask what you were. I saw your emotion there, so I appreciate you saying something.
That was crazy. That was crazy. Not the response I thought you were going to have when he asked that question.
Hey, James, by the way, that's a lesson for everybody when you watched how that unfolded.
Hoff, I'll tell you what, brother, the depth of perspective, I get now some pretty incredible phone calls. You get a mom or a grandmother that calls you and says, hey, my son or my grandson's looking at 65. You get some depth of perspective. You get some pretty intense conversations. You spend 11 days inside of a prison riot and you start to learn what really people are asking you.
That's it, Jim, man, what a great question, dude. And, it's funny you say that because, last year, when I started to harvest like pretty much when COVID hit. So January of 2020 or whatever it was. And, it was a weird thing for me because I've always just helped and, everything for free. And I was like, man, how can I turn this into a business? And, we started charging people like $50. I felt bad charging people $50 a month. But then it's like when you start seeing the people's trajectories of how much healthier they're getting, how much more money they're making. It's like, then you ask somebody, hey, if you can lose 70 pounds within a year, what's that worth to you? Right? If you could be in a community with over 100 entrepreneurs who want to help connect the dots for you, motivate you, hold you accountable, when most people never even meet 100 people that care for you in their whole lives, what does that mean for you? Well, how much is that worth to you? Right? So it's almost like, listen, I'm going to, over the course of a year, ask you for $1,200, but I'm going to give you $1 million in return. Because that's what I feel relationships and your health and listening to people like you, like a bajillion times over worth. And it's so funny, man. It's like, and yeah, do people that, they dip out over a $50 membership and then like I get in my own head, I'm like, are you insane? Like, but, it's like you do live in that space. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, like, I think the paradigm shift for me was, am I delivering, 100x, what, and Jim, to your point, it's like, there's a parent out there right now. I mean, you think of these rehabs or whatever it is, how much do they spend? Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Ugh.
And man, if I put, dude, it's like, you keep my kid alive, you change their life, it's worth millions to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fucking scary. I got kids I can't, the scariest thing for me is to go through the shit that I went through with my family growing up. Whew, man.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
That's worth a lot. You know what I mean, Jim? So don't ever think that shit, man. That's a limiting belief, which is what we just talked about.
Yeah. No, you'll be just fine, Jim. And if I can help you refine it, let me know.
Good stuff. Hey guys, does anybody have anything else before we sign off? Oh, Linda, there we go. Come on, Linda hit us last couple weeks ago with some great stuff too.
I just wanted to kind of pick up where Jim left off. Jim, we definitely need to connect, but this group knows that I lost my youngest sister to a heroin addiction, and I will do anything to, it was the biggest loss of my life. We started Team Tony weeks after she passed away, and we raised a tremendous amount of money for the Women's Recovery Help. But I used that pain to help others because I don't want them to feel what I've gone through. And the one thing in talking to people, especially females, again, I kind of gravitate towards the female audience because of my sister, but they don't feel like they deserve the help or can get better. So your story is going to help them and help reestablish a confidence that just from your example of having that long time being clean, that you have hope for them. And if anyone can make a change or want to make a change, is they need hope. And if you can share that hope with families or with the individuals that are suffering from addiction, it's going to be more powerful than you ever know. And I've spoken at pep rallies. I am not a public speaker. This group knows I don't do videos very well, and it's so outside my comfort zone. But I can tell you that some of the most impactful conversations I've had have been on a stage sharing some of the things that I would rather keep secret. And because it's painful, it's not easy to talk about my sister. The anniversary of her death is coming up on May 31st. It'll be 5 years. And there is not a second that goes by that I don't think of her. And she wanted to live a life. Like, I have a letter that I keep on my refrigerator that says, I want to live. This time is different. I want to be a recovery coach. And that's what fuels us, my sisters and I, to help others. And I don't have a medical background. I don't have experience in that with an addiction. So I don't know the reality what it is, but what I do know is that the stigma that was associated with it is what killed her, not the drug itself, because it was her lack of self-worth that made her go back to those drugs. And your story is going to impact even one person, then it's worth it. And on a day after where we're all kind of traumatized for what happened yesterday, there is something to be learned from that. We all have a role to play in the change that we want to see. And that might just be standing up and being kind to someone and teaching our kids that guns are not okay. Whatever it is, we all have a role to play, but the most impact usually comes from the pain, not from the glory. And I just wanted to kind of say that, Jim. So if you want to continue the conversation, I am always happy to kind of talk.
That's awesome. Linda, one phrase comes to mind as you were talking, and I'm sure everybody's heard it, but it says, if you hide your story, then you hide God's glory.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting, for me, people say it all the time. My story is so public, it's obnoxious. So I apologize to anybody who's seen it 8 million times. But, I joke all the time. I was 25 years old with millions of dollars under management. And the first time Yahoo Finance or Wall Street Journal interviewed me was when I was a felon. It's comical. Like it just is funny. And so for me, it's so public now that I can't even hide it under a bushel if I tried. But what I often tell people is, and I'll kind of wrap up with this if there's anything else left, if there's not anything else left, is that Christ kept the scars. Okay? When you're talking about an individual who I believe was a perfect being, and when he came back and was resurrected, he kept those prints. I believe, gospel according to Travis, I believe he kept those prints so that his tribe would know who he was. And I believe that in our life, if we are supposed to become perfect beings, living an imperfect life, our scars allow us to find the people that are authentically our tribe. They won't judge us by what we've gone through. They won't judge us by the things that we've endured, but they'll find us because of those imperfections, and they'll know that they have kinship.
Good stuff. Good stuff. That is good word right there, Pastor Richey. That is good word right there, baby. I love that.
I appreciate it.
Guys, thank you so much for hopping on the call. As you guys all know, making a commitment to yourself. There's still people that don't make these calls, and I appreciate you guys plugging in and being intentional with trying to get to this next level. And then obviously, Travis, thank you so much, man. I'm glad everybody got to experience you and the amazing gift you are and the impact that you're making, guys. Give Travis a follow, guys. Support him. Share the call. Share Travis. People need to hear his message. People need to hear and see what we're doing in here, too, so we can help and impact other people. Butts, I see you got one more thing. Your hand raised.
Yeah, just real quick, how can we follow Travis? You said follow him, but what forms of social media?
Let me type it in here.
And I'll post in the Facebook group, too, guys.
Okay. That's how you spell the name. I am Travis Richey.
Okay. Sweet.
I am goes back to the identity.
Hey guys, so he said it multiple times. It's not just the motivation, right? It's not getting fired up. What are the things that you're going to take and implement? What are you going to put in your routine? What are you going to put in your morning routine? I heard him say meditation, right? We talk about mind, body, and business in the harvest. That's what we build our day off of. Priming your mind. This is something that you can take seriously now. We've heard it from many speakers now. It's like, let's start putting it into action. And Travis, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, my man. My pleasure. Hopefully it was impactful. We added some value. Hope everybody crushes it. Thank you so much.
Have a great week, guys, and have a great Memorial Day weekend. See you soon.
Bye.